Assessing appraisals. Performance reviews, difficult at the best of times, now pose a distinct challenge for organizations adapting to the new normal of a pandemic. Two workplace experts offer advice on how to navigate performance reviews in a time of change. By Nicola Heath. Despite its reputation as a necessary evil, the performance appraisal is a valuable tool for organizations seeking to boost productivity and embed culture and values. Employees want feedback. People want to know what's working and what's not working, says workplace expert Michelle Gibbons, author of Career Leap: How to Reinvent and Liberate Your Career. Feedback that is relevant, meaningful, and delivered well increases engagement, she says. On the flip side, a mismanaged performance review process can be incredibly demotivating. In a period of uncertainty, timing is critical. The middle of a lockdown, for example, might not be the best time to assess performance, Gibbons observes. At the same time, that doesn't remove the need for accountability, she says. Don't deny feedback. Instead, approach feedback conversations with sensitivity in an atmosphere of trust and psychological safety. The economic landscape changed drastically in 2020. Many people find it impossible to meet employment targets and goals established in a pre pandemic setting. Before the performance review process begins, says Gibbons, ask: are KPIs still relevant and meaningful and fair at this point in time? Agree on any changes to assessment criteria and allow both parties time to prepare for the conversation's new scope. Be clear about purpose. Ascertain what it is the organization wants to achieve from the performance evaluation process. Is the performance review tied to bonuses and remuneration? Or is it purely a feedback session? Asked Gibbons. Different organizations have different objectives. Consider the logistics of a virtual performance appraisal, until now, unfamiliar territory for many organizations. Addressing logistical issues ahead of time will foster the frank and open exchange required to facilitate a focused, healthy, and robust conversation, says Gibbons. Well before the review, ensure both parties are able to find a space that is quiet and distraction free for the conversation's duration. Also, troubleshoot technology well in advance. There's nothing harder than trying to have a conversation when the person on the other end has poor bandwidth, says Gibbons. If a dodgy connection precludes the use of Zoom or Skype, a phone call might be better, she says. Work out which options work best for both parties. There are several factors to consider in cases of poor performance. How critical is the person's role? What is the risk if things go wrong? Has the problem arisen recently during the pandemic, or is it a pre existing issue? Then get curious, says Gibbons. Seek to understand the reasons behind shifts in an individual's behavior and offer support to help address any problems. No one should hear bad news for the first time in a performance review. If you have a long standing performance issue, my question is, why have you waited until now to raise it? Says Gibbons, who recommends delivering critical feedback in the moment. It's incumbent on the leader to give constant feedback. The more you do that, the easier it becomes to do performance reviews. Management expert Mark Lebusque says feedback should be honest and timely. I've heard horror stories where an employee gets to a performance review and a manager brings up an issue that happened 3 months ago, he says. Schedule regular formal check ins. Lebusque suggests monthly, interspersed with informal feedback conversations throughout the year. You collect and create evidence as you go, so you are not scrambling at the end, he says. Here are some do's and don'ts of performance reviews. Do approach the performance evaluation process with empathy. Acknowledge that the pandemic and subsequent recession are major sources of stress that will have an impact on performance. Let people know that there is a level of leniency here, says Mark Libus. Don't cancel. When a manager cancels a performance review at the last minute, all it says to the employee is you don't matter, says Michelle Gibbons. If cancellation is unavoidable, don't delegate the task of rescheduling it to an assistant. Call yourself and explain why, she says. Do be specific. Leaders often come to the conversation unprepared and offer general observations, says Gibbons. It's vital to provide concrete examples to clearly illustrate what the employee is doing right or how they can improve. The employee wants clarity, she says. Don't be distracted, often a challenge when working from home, especially when children and pets are in the picture. Be present, says Lebusque. Don't scroll through messages while you're talking to someone on Zoom. Do give an employee time to process difficult feedback. Have a couple of conversations, says Gibbons. After an initial discussion, allow an employee time to reflect before reconvening later for another conversation. The intent should be to motivate and encourage the employee to either keep doing really well or to understand that there are concrete ways for them to improve and that you, as their leader, are there to support them. Don't end the conversation with, keep up the good work, says Lebusque. Finish on a positive note of understanding. Ask, are you clear about what we spoke about? He says. A good manager will say, I'll give you 24 hours to process and then come back to me with any questions.